People who were kidnapped. What's your story?
I never thought shit like this happened anymore. Maybe I was naive, maybe just plain stupid. Growing up in a small town, you hear about things, kidnappings, child labor, but they seem like distant nightmares, nothing that would ever touch you. Hell, I was just an ordinary kid, hanging out with friends, doing schoolwork, playing video games. Normal shit. That all changed last summer. It was a hot, sticky night in July. I remember because I could barely sleep with the windows open, the damn mosquitoes buzzing around. I'd gone to the corner store for a soda, just a quick trip. The streets were quiet, not a soul around. Out of nowhere, this van screeches to a halt beside me. Before I could even think, these two guys grabbed me. I kicked, I screamed. I fought like hell, but they were stronger. A fist slammed into my gut, knocking the wind out of me. Next thing I knew, a hood was thrown over my head, and I was shoved into the back of the van. I don't know how long we drove. Could have been hours, could have been days. I drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain in my ribs flaring every time the van hit a bump. When we finally stopped, they yanked me out, dragging me through what felt like dirt and leaves. They ripped the hood off, and I saw where we were. Some rundown shack in the middle of a dense forest. Trees as far as the eye could see. Inside, it was dark and smelled like piss and mold. They threw me into this small room, no bigger than a closet. That's when I saw him, the other kid. He couldn't have been older than 8 or 9, skinny as a rail, eyes wide with terror. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. There were blue marks all over his body, some fresh, some old. They left us there, locking the door behind them. I tried talking to the kid, asking his name, where he was from, but he just shook his head. He didn't talk much. Maybe he couldn't. Who knows what kind of hell he'd been through before I showed up. Days passed, maybe weeks. It was hard to keep track of time in that dark, suffocating room. They fed us just enough to keep us alive, but it was mostly scraps. They didn't care if we starved. Sometimes they'd come in and beat us, for no reason at all, just because they could. I learned to keep my mouth shut, to not provoke them. But the other kid, he wasn't so lucky. They injected him with something one night. He screamed and thrashed, his little body convulsing on the dirty floor. I tried to help him, but they held me back, laughing like it was some sick game. Fucking bastards, I muttered under my breath. Every day I told myself I'd get out of there, that I'd find a way to escape. But with each beating, each injection, that hope faded a little more. One night, they got sloppy. They left the door unlocked, probably thinking we were too weak to try anything. I waited until I was sure they were asleep, then nudged the kid. He looked at me, eyes full of fear and confusion, but he followed. We crept through the shack, hearts pounding in our chests. Outside, the forest loomed, dark and uninviting. But it was our only chance. We ran, not stopping to look back. Branches scratched our faces, undergrowth tripped us up, but we kept going. We had to. Behind us, I could hear shouts, the sounds of pursuit. The bastards had realized we were gone. The forest seemed endless. Every tree looked the same, every path a dead end. The kid was slowing down, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. I grabbed his hand, practically dragging him along. We couldn't stop. Not yet. Hours passed, maybe days. The forest was a maze, and I had no idea where we were going. Just away. Away from those monsters. We finally stumbled upon a small creek. I let the kid drink first, keeping an eye out for any signs of pursuit. When I was sure we were alone, I took a drink myself. The water was cold and tasted like freedom. We followed the creek, hoping it would lead us somewhere safe. The kid was getting weaker. He needed real food, real medical help, but we had nothing, just each other. Eventually, we reached a road. It was a miracle. I flagged down the first car that passed, a beat-up old truck. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, took one look at us and knew something was wrong. He didn't ask questions, just helped us into the truck and drove us to the nearest town. The police didn't believe us at first. 2 kids, dirty and bruised, talking about kidnappers in the forest. But they checked it out, found the shack, and realized we were telling the truth. They took us to the hospital, treated our wounds, and fed us real food. It was like waking up from a nightmare. I don't know what happened to the other kid. Social services took him away, said they'd find his family. I hope they did. As for me, I went back home, but things were different. I was different. The nightmares didn't go away. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, felt their fists, heard the kids' screams. But I survived. And I promised myself I'd never forget. I'd never stop fighting. For me. For the kid. For every kid who's been through hell and back. Fuck those bastards. We're stronger than they think.